What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Barbells and Trails. I'm your host, Brett. I'm back with another episode. Kind of changing things up with the podcast, doing things a little differently, I think. By myself, at least for this episode. Kind of see where it goes. But this episode, I decided, just finished his book, and was kind of, I don't know if I want to say inspired, but I thought it'd be a good topic to cover. We've talked about the man before, but I think our topic for today is David Goggins. So I don't know if you guys know who David Goggins is, but David Goggins is an American ultramarathon runner, ultra-distance cyclist, triathlete, public speaker, author, former Navy SEAL member. I don't think that's the right terminology there, but ex-Navy SEAL, and he is a inspirational public speaker, and he's done all this stuff. His whole thing's on mindset and pushing yourself, basically, I guess is the best way to describe it. But in this episode, gonna kind of go through and talk about his life story a little bit and what he kind of preaches and some of his rules for life and some of his challenges that he sets up for his readers and himself, trying to, I guess, motivate, which isn't the right word because I know he hates motivation because he doesn't see it as a good enough reason, and motivation is temporary in the human mind. But just kind of how he's pushed through and his own setbacks in life and has pushed far beyond what anybody ever would expected out of him. But I hope you guys have been enjoying the podcast. This is our 9th episode, so I appreciate everybody's support. We've just crossed, I think, 250 plays on Anchor. We're almost at 600 views on our YouTube from all the videos, so please consider subscribing on there. Follow us on Spotify, watch the videos, and we appreciate the support. Comment on the videos, anything. Love getting feedback from you guys. And all right, well, let's get into it. David Goggins was born on February 17th, 1975 in Buffalo, New York, by Toughness and Jackie Goggins. He was born and raised in Buffalo up to, I believe, the age of 6 or 7. And at a very young age, he had a rough childhood. In his book, Can't Hurt Me, which is where I'm taking most of this information from, and between that and other things online and reading about him and things along those lines, he even says in his own book that he should have been a statistic between everything he's been through in his life. He shouldn't have ended up where he is. Between his childhood and his upbringing, he was raised by a very abusive father, both physically and mentally in several ways, and at a very young age had to work late nights at his father's skate rink and work there at 5 years old, 6 years old, working till 3, 4 in the morning, and then still having to go to school and try to live and uphold a fairly normal life and kind of keep to the neighborhood, not hierarchy, but keep up to standards of appealing and looking like a normal family. But on the inside, they were dealing with an abusive and psychotic father that was losing his mind and running underground drug smuggling businesses and maybe it wasn't just drug smuggling, but dirty businesses and making a lot of money underground and trying to live the American dream, but falsely. David Goggins' father was so bad that he talks about several stories in the book about how his father had treated him and his mother, where they had cops called and the police didn't believe his mother was being abused, or they didn't do anything about it because his dad was a smooth talker and put on a good face and was a compulsive liar. But not only that, he talks about one situation where he was riding his bike and his father was at home, and he told him not to go on the road, and he was riding his bike down the sidewalk, turned around in someone's driveway, and his front tire barely glanced and touched the pavement on the road. And when he came back inside, his father yelled at him and told him to go upstairs. And let's just say he received punishment, I guess is the easiest way to say it. But he talks about how he was around his father with other women, and his dad pulled a gun on him one time because his father was so paranoid with some of the dirty business he was up against and dealing with stuff mentally and on drugs and dealing with all this stuff, that eventually his mother had enough of it and committed to a plan to basically escape and move back to Indiana, where she was originally from. Some of this is something that me and Noah had already kind of discussed earlier in a few podcasts ago, where he ended up moving to Brazil, Indiana, and started going to school there. And in the book, he talks about how life was better, but it still was not easy because his mother struggled to pay bills. I believe they lived with his grandparents for a short amount of time trying to get on their feet. And not only that, but with everything he had dealt with, David was not necessarily an outstanding student when it came to academics and grades. So he had struggled to get through kindergarten, or not kindergarten, but second grade, third grade. And he had certain teachers where there was one teacher that actually helped him move along and do well in school, but he noticed that he had to work harder than everybody else at a young age and struggled. And then once he got through that class, other teachers were not so caring and helpful. So he struggled through high school, but at one point became a very, very good basketball player. And at one point his mother ended up in another relationship and was actually engaged and were planning on getting married. And the amount of traumatic experiences he had seen as a child is absolutely ridiculous, because in that situation, which Noah and me I think talked about a few podcasts ago, what would have been future stepfather actually got murdered. He lived in Indy at the time, went home, and someone had snuck into his garage when he wasn't looking and shot him and killed him. And he doesn't talk about if they ever figured out why or what was going on with that or why he was killed. But that was something that kind of broke his mother even more, considering the stuff she dealt with between his father. And it was the one chance that it seemed like David's mom had a turnaround, and it didn't help his situation. But not only that, when he was in 8th grade, he talks about another traumatic experience where he basically had witnessed a small boy get ran over by a school bus, which in itself is absolutely insane that would happen to anybody. But he talks about in the audiobook, and with the reader to the audiobook, they discuss how they fact-checked all their information and spent plenty of time doing this, that there are articles of this happening, and that I think this would have been in the mid-'80s down in Brazil, Indiana. So I have not looked at these newspapers myself, but the amount of things that he had witnessed as a child and the stuff he was dealing with, once we get later into his life and some of the accomplishments he's had and the stuff he's pushed through, like he says, he shouldn't be where he is and done as well as he did, considering his bringing up and everything he dealt with. And sadly, another struggle he had throughout schooling wasn't only academic, but also racial issues. At the time, Brazil, Indiana wasn't necessarily the most racially accepting towns, And he talks about how a few towns over, they still held KKK meetings and stuff like that nearby. And he dealt with that in a small town school where I'm pretty sure he accounts for being the only African American in his class, if not possibly the entire school. So that's another setback that he had to deal with personally, working through school and dealing with people just not listening to what exactly he's doing. He talks about how he had death threats on his truck and stuff on his locker and nooses hung in his locker and a bunch of crazy stuff, and how he had to talk to the principal about it. But the principal knew all this was happening, but there was nothing he could do considering, or there wasn't anything he did do considering it was only happening to one student, which sadly is a terrible reality that he had to deal with for years, and he dealt with it and worked through it. And got through it. He barely graduated, but when he was in high school, he was an amazing varsity basketball player, and he actually got kicked because he didn't want to put up with his coach's training regiments, but he ended up becoming one of the best defensive players on the team, and I think was one of the best players in Indiana when he was in high school at the time. As David worked through the book and talks about his life story, he ends up making different challenges for his readers to better yourself as you read through the book. I will end up talking about these challenges later on once we get through some of his life stories and situations he was in. But it's something we will talk about, and it's basically a step-by-step plan on how to make yourself mentally tough and to build up a thick skin, I guess, in certain instances, and how to deal with daily challenges physically, mentally, emotionally. But so after high school, he, in the book, in the book after high school, it skips ahead where he is working as an exterminator for Eco Labs, which is a local Indiana company. But at the time, he was almost 300 pounds and had kind of given up on life after basically dropping out of the United States Air Force Pararescue Unit. And the reason he dropped out was of a medical medical exemption for sickle cell, which they discovered in him, which in fact would not have been a challenge for his military career because of physical attributes. But he used that as his exit from the pararescue unit, because one of the things he struggled with mainly with that was water training. He never learned how to swim and was negative buoyant, as he liked to say. And he had a lot of struggles trying to deal with that part of the training. And that was also when they found out that he had sickle cell. And he talks about how I don't know if he necessarily regrets his decision, but he saw that at the time he saw the easy way out and he took it. But it was during his time at Eco Labs that he happened to come home one day, and he said that he flipped on the TV and started watching a documentary on Navy SEALs. And he had never totally known what they were or their whole backstory. And he said that he watched for the 2-hour documentary or whatever it ended up being for the Navy SEALs. And he was extremely intrigued and wanted to be a part of something like that. So within a short amount of time, he ended up going to the Navy Recruitment Center and talking to them about wanting to join the SEALs and do the BUDS training and all this, and he wanted to basically get back into the military. The recruiter, surprisingly, considering he weighed about 300 pounds, was not deterred by his situation. And he talked afterwards, it was because that he could tell his internal determination, and that he wanted it and he believed in him, and he wasn't gonna necessarily let that deter him. And he told him that he had to lose and weigh in at 180, I believe, and pass his, and he was told that he had to pass his ASVABs and get a certain score. And that was one thing he was terrible at, was education and schooling. He was never good at studying. He was never good at dealing with tests, and he had to hit a certain score to even be able to get into the Navy SEAL training. So he had 3 months to lose almost 100 pounds, or I think it was more, and to also study and pass ASVAB. And he studied for 2 weeks straight, and that was the first thing he focused on. He was able to study, and he was able to pass, surprisingly, and it was very emotional for him. He actually had begged the test instructor to let him know the score before he was supposed to, because he was so worried that he didn't pass. But he did make it, and he passed with the exact score he needed to get in. And from there on, he had to train. So he trained for 3 months and lost, I think he lost the weight. Let's just say he got into the course. But at the time, to do that and to hit his goal, he talked about how he would run 6 miles a day, go to the pool, taught himself how to swim 2 miles a day and doing laps, and then he would go to the gym and weight train for 3 hours. And between that, he would study ride his bike and study, and he would do like 25 miles cycling and all this stuff, training like crazy, dropping weight ridiculously. And that was when he started to get into his mindset growth. And that was one thing he said, that this was something where he struggled, and it wasn't something he started with himself. And it's something he had to work and build to, was his mindset, which I feel like he is known for mainly, if you know his content and who he is and what he preaches. But this was when he started to realize that pain is what you got to deal with to get through struggle, and that pain is necessary to get through life, and to reach the goals you want, you got to push past what you think is possible. So once he gets his training done, he is able to pass, and he is recruited into the Navy. And after that, he is welcomed to the Navy after passing his tests and his physical abilities. And he ends up moving to San Diego to do the training. He actually goes through Hell Week, which is the main thing he's heard about with Bud's training, 3 times. He had dropped out, or not dropped out, but had been forced out because of medical issues. And in his first go through Hell Week, I believe he made it about halfway. During his first Hell Week, he actually caught pneumonia. And during his training, he talks about how he was coughing and puking up blood, that his ammonia was so bad and his lungs were so full of fluid that the doctors had to pull him out. And he talks about a story where during the training, he was so headstrong that even though he was basically dying, if he would keep going, he kept getting on the log as they were doing log carries down the beach. They kept pulling him off to basically tell him that he needed to stop and that he needed to go to the doctor. And then next thing you know, people were hearing over the radio that Goggins was back on the log, and they kept having to pull him off until they finally got him to the doctors. So you basically had to take I think it was probably a month hiatus on what he had to do with the military, but then he went back for round 2. And when he got back for round 2, he went through Hell Week like there was no tomorrow. Some of the people he was in when they were split into their boat crews, which is kind of like their team for the week, is some of the, I guess the most renowned person that he was with that in that group was Chris Kyle, which is the author and main I guess star, but the main story behind The American Sniper, and probably one of the most famous, I would say one of the most famous Navy SEALs in the past 10 years or so. And he was a part of his boat crew, and he kind of proved himself to be the main leader of that boat crew at the time, where he helped raise the morale of his boat crew to push forward and do more than any other group has ever done during Hell Week. And when he did that, let's just say he pissed off the brass, and they pushed him harder and made it more challenging on him in the Hell Week. Because within the last couple days, they basically get no sleep, but maybe an hour. And let's just say he was not allowed to get any sleep, hardly. And some of the instructors pushed him even harder and made him swim 2 miles out from shore and basically deal with hypothermic temperatures. And he just dealt with it, and he kind of proved them wrong. And he actually passed Hell Week that time, basically with passing colors. But he ended up getting rejected from Buds for another medical reason. And the whole reason was during Hell Week he had fractured and broken his kneecap in several places. So his knee had swollen to the size of a grapefruit, and he had to pause his training for Buds, and they had forced him out for medical leave pretty much. And when he came back, they told him that this was his third and final chance, that if he had any medical issues and had to be resolved from the training again, that he was not able to come back and train. So he had proven himself the time before, but he had to go through Hell Week yet again, and he again passed with flying colors. At one point, he pushed himself so hard and so far that he had stress fractures on his shins, and to get through the rest of training, he had to tape up his legs every single morning, and he'd get to the base at like 4 a.m. to put basically 3 socks and several tape layers on both of his legs to basically deal with the stress fractures so that he could just physically get through the training. And because he pushed so hard and did as much, at one point when instructors were challenging some of his other SEAL trainees as they were getting through it, they would pull him out of doing extra challenges like push-ups or physical activities during Buds because they knew he enjoyed it too much, and which he kind of hated, surprisingly. But yeah, he passed with flying colors, and he finally became the Navy SEAL he had always wanted to be. So after that, David was able to actually graduate from the Navy SEAL school and became a full-time Navy SEAL active duty. In the book, he does not talk about many of his operations or what he did. I know he was in the war in Iraq at one point and deployed over there and dealt with certain things. But actually, one of the main things he did do during his career as a Navy SEAL was he ended up working for the recruiting office. And one of the main reasons was because he was one of, at the time, I believe, only 36 African-American Navy SEALs ever to graduate from Buds. And the Navy, it might have been the Navy overall military, wanted him to become a recruiter and try to tell his life story and influence and inspire more young men to hopefully join the military and join the Navy in particular. So that was kind of his main role for the rest of his Navy career. And he had actually, during that time, started training for doing ultra marathons, and he ran his first 100-miler. And the whole reason why he ended up starting running these ultra marathons and doing all these crazy endurance events and long distance running was to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which is a foundation that helps pay for fallen soldiers' schooling and college and scholarships and stuff like that for any fallen soldiers' families. So he wanted to raise money and awareness for that. So he ended up training and becoming basically an ultra marathon runner. He did triathlons. He did anything along the sort. But when he first did it, he was, I guess, overweight. He was in his 220s, but he was muscular. So he did not necessarily have a build for running. So, and when he did some of these challenges, he did them without any experience or research into what he was getting himself into. So during several of these races, he on some of them he about killed himself because he pushed his body so hard that his body was shutting down several times, and he almost had kidney failure, and he was not prepared in any instance for some of the races he did. But over time, he slowly learned and adapted, learned how to train, and learned from his fuck ups to then basically create and become a very deadly athlete when it came to ultra running. And part of it was his mindset. He I don't think part of it was necessarily his own athletic ability. Some of it I feel like at times was just being able to push himself farther than some others were, because even in some of the races he did, like I said, he was ill experienced and he was able to push and still do better than many people that have done it before and were very professional, and he was able to fight and get through it. And for him, it became a mental challenge, which some of that does call back to when me and Noah were talking about weightlifting and cardio, and how at times cardio can be one of the most challenging things because it is just you in your head and it is just fighting to keep going. But as he was a military recruiter, he ran many ultra races, and that was one of the things he did. Was he trained with some of the students from the schools he went and presented at, and he became a public speaker for the Navy. And he actually found out that he had a hole in his heart where he was actually basically leaking blood, and that it was causing unoptimal oxygen production in his bloodstream that was, if anything, preventing him from doing as well physically than he would have compared to anyone else. And at the time, most people that did have this condition were born with it, and there was no tests to know, and it wasn't something that you would necessarily know until you got older. So he talked about how, for the most part, because of all his athletic accomplishments, he had a regular heart rate of about 30, roughly, and regular pulse. And because of this, at one point, his heart rate was sitting at like 80 or 90. And whenever he tried training, his heart rate would spike to over 200. So he had issues and had to go to the hospital and actually had heart surgery twice, because the first time the surgery they did not have a large enough patch to help cover and heal the hole. And even after his second surgery, he was he was not hardly able to train for almost I think it was pushing a year and a half. And which is even a testament to some of the crazy accomplishments he has had in the past, with getting through 3 hell weeks, or 2.5, and doing all the other training and the marathons and the ultra running and endurance events. Was he did all this with a broken heart that physically caused him more pain and issues as he worked through some of his life journey. And it was a challenge for him that he had no clue that actually probably made everything harder. And that's probably one reason why he had so many lung issues when it came to pneumonia and stuff like that, or dealing with stress fractures. His body was not able to heal as well as anyone else because of its defect from birth. In the book, he talks about afterwards, he did all these, he trained and tried getting into Delta Force, and he had been through Ranger School during his military, but he ended up retiring. And he actually basically had a near-death experience where all of a sudden he lost his energy, he was fatigued, he could hardly train, and he thought it had something to do with his heart. But it turned out because of what he was pushing his body to, his body had become so tight, and without stretching and flexibility, it actually had restricted blood flow throughout his body and had caused his organs and certain things to basically go on a decline. So at a fairly young age, he was dealing with a lot of issues in his 30s and had to learn and stretch them out. But some of the other things he's done besides his ultra races was he also broke the record for the most amount of pull-ups in 24 hours. And he had to try that 3 separate times because just like but his ultra marathon training, he did not prepare, or not as well as he should have, his first times, and had to learn from his experiences to then better and make stuff easier, to then defeat and make his goals possible. And he talks about this in several instances in the book where he's just dealt and overcome with different things. He found ways to get around it, stuff he wasn't prepared for, stuff he should have probably been prepared for when looking at it, but stuff he didn't know or didn't look into that he just had to deal with and had to power through. And then if he did end up coming up short or failing, he took those instances as learning opportunities to then better himself with future training and future endeavors to make himself better and stronger when it came to different challenges he set himself into. For the most part, that is David Goggins' overall career experiences and some of the main things he's known for throughout his past. But at this point in time, I feel like in life he is basically an inspirational, almost influencer on Instagram. It's not like he posts every day, but he posts stuff on there, I think, several times a week, basically trying to push people to be their absolute best, because he was able to push himself to become what he is today. And there's a lot of truth in the matter to what he preaches, and it's very true. And as I talked earlier in the book, he talks about several challenges he sets up for his readers, and I'm going to go through and kind of read those just because it's something that everybody should think about and probably consider. I know that when I read the book, I have not started any of these challenges, but it's stuff I'm definitely going to try to kind of weave into my own life and the structure on how I think of things. But in the book, he talks about dealing with his own dirty laundries and struggling with his abusive father and all that stuff, and realizing that wanted people to realize that he didn't have an easy childhood and that he had to overcome his own struggles and that anybody can do that. And his first challenge, he basically tells everybody to grab a journal and write down everything that was basically the bad cards dealt in your life, and all the bullshit you dealt with, just anything you dealt with growing up. Write down all the details and present day factors that are limiting your growth and success, to make sure you're honest with yourself and understand that everyone has setbacks, and you got to know where you came from and that you've overcame those things, and they are in the past, and everybody deals with something. So writing that stuff down is basically to submit that in your mind that this is stuff you dealt with. This is stuff that has probably put you behind the pack compared to other people, but that doesn't matter, and you can do anything kind of situation. But in challenge number 2, he talks about when he was dealing with his financial and racial issues after dealing with his abusive father when he moved away, and the next thing he made for a challenge was his what's called his accountability mirror, where basically he wanted people that read the book, and in this challenge he wants people to put Post-its on a mirror and write down your insecurities, your dreams, your goals, and all these different things, to be self-aware and to be able to hold yourself accountable and to achieve your self-improvement. Every time you reach a goal, you're supposed to remove a Post-it from the mirror, and you're supposed to put all these things on your mirror so it's something you see every day, and you look at yourself and you ask yourself, am I working towards these goals? Have I hit any of these goals? What do I need to do to get there? What are the insecurities? What's stopping me from reaching that next level? And it's a great way to like it says, to keep yourself accountable and to kind of keep up and keep working just through things, because it's all about making small progressions. It's nothing about doing anything crazy or breaking records and stuff like he did. He's done some crazy stuff, and he is definitely not a normal human being, and he admits that. And with some of the stuff he doesn't want people to go run 100 miles without training. He doesn't want people to do these things because what he did do was stupid at one point, and he understands that. But he does know that people need to challenge themselves and to keep working towards their goals, and not to try giving yourself your own mental excuses because of what you've been through in your life, and all these different ways to get around it, that you need to be upfront with yourself and work on whatever it is, and that no matter what, you can get through it. But for challenge 3, he talks about his own medical struggles and tells a story about being diagnosed with sickle cell and his blood disease and dealing with the military training. And so his third challenge was to help people develop a calloused mind. And the way he did that was by stepping out of your comfort zone, and it basically is his can't hurt me mindset. And he basically tells you to get into your journal again and write down the things that you don't like to do and things that make you uncomfortable, and then start to take tiny steps towards doing these things. And he had recommend doing something that sucks every day, even if it's something as small as making your bed, and over time kick it up a notch. And it's just like I was saying before, it's all about doing the little things to slowly make yourself uncomfortable, step out of those comfort zones, and to make yourself more adapt to discomfort and struggle. So it could be something like he said, making your bed, something that's not typical for you to do every day. It's just trying to get out of your comfort zone. Go on a walk in the morning, take a cold shower in the morning, get the sauna. Just stuff that you're not used to that is a challenge. And then as we keep moving, he had these challenges at the end of every chapter in the book. So it kind of moves through the book as you read, and it builds these different challenges. So challenge 4, he talks about the lessons he was able to get from his military training and the SEALs and all this. And his 4th challenge is called Taking Souls. And the way he puts it is he wants you to think about a competitive challenge that you're in right now, such as something to deal with school, work, physical things, sports, anything along those lines, and to identify your opponent, which may be a teacher or a boss, and to work harder than ever before and dominate. Basically, make them watch you achieve what they never could have done themselves. So with how he words it, it's his whole thing is he thinks that you should find that thing you really want to push yourself to, and someone that thinks that they're better than you, and basically take their soul. And in that, he means push yourself harder to prove that you are better than whoever it is you're trying to basically overcome, and to basically use that as your own motivation to basically, in a way, say fuck you to whoever it is, and that I am better at this than whoever it is, your teacher. You're basically proving people wrong, and that is a very great motivator for a lot of things in life, is basically proving someone wrong that assumes things of you. And I know I've personally been there, and it's something you gotta find and work towards, and it's finding that fuel to keep going. And then as for challenge 5, he talks about the importance of his callous mind and how to get through tough moments and challenges in his life. He talks about his visualization tools. So David Goggins says that you should practice this. Visualization is your own personal successes you hope to achieve, as well as the challenge you may face as you get there. And it's supposed to help you be prepared as possible as you can, to help you develop a can't hurt me attitude. So basically to visualize the challenges and the goals, and to look in the future to see, like, if these are the goals that I have in mind, if I want to lose this amount of weight, or if I want to open this business, if I want to get these grades, what is in my way to achieving that, and to basically break it down before you get to it. So in your mind, you know what's coming, and you can basically preemptively be prepared for the challenges you're about to face. so it doesn't hit you hard because you knew it was going to happen. And that might be if you're trying to hit weight or something, or lose weight, that part of the challenge is going to be dieting and dealing with that mentally, and you see the challenges is coming, you see the things that pop up in your head, like it's going to be your own challenge to get through it. And just being able to prepare that mentally and visualize the challenge ahead of you, it just makes you more prepared to take on these challenges and chip away at them. Now, as for challenge 6, David states that pain is a reward for him, and that's one reason why the Navy SEALs instructors did not like him, because at one point they realized he enjoyed the challenge and the pain. And so he talks about when he does need motivation to keep going, he has his metaphorical cookie jar. And so when he needs motivations, he takes a cookie out of the jar. And so to create your own cookie jar, he tells you to yet again get a journal and write down what accomplishments you have achieved, what obstacles you were able to overcome. And so that next time you set an ambitious goal and go for them, and you need help to push yourself, you reach into that cookie jar whenever you need it and see and look back at what you have achieved to basically motivate you to keep going, to be like, even though this is a challenge and I'm going to struggle with it, I've been able to do this. I've been able to lose this weight. I've been able to diet. I've been able to stick to this, and to look at what you've already overcome as fuel to keep going and keep pushing towards your next goal. Now on to challenge 7. He talks about the concept of a governor, like in a car, and it's the part of your brain that holds you back from reaching your full potential. And he talks about it being his 40% rule, and that most people are operating at 40% of what they're actually capable of. So in this challenge, in the summary, he talks about removing the governor from your mind and to push back past your normal stopping point, gradually ramping it up more and more, remembering that life is just a mind game and that you can withstand pain, and this will help you achieve things that you might currently believe to be impossible. So the ways he talks about implementing this is, if it's a physical thing, if it's let's say running or weightlifting, is to basically push to the breaking point, and instead of stopping where you normally would, push 5% more, just that little longer. Like when you feel like you can't go any farther, keep going, and then the next week do the same thing and slowly progress, where over time you will realize that you can push farther and farther than you ever would have, because everybody has that natural feeling where they think that this is it, this is all I can do, this is too hard, this is too challenging, this is too painful, I'm too tired. But in all reality, you've got to push yourself past that point, and you physically can handle it, and it is basically your brain trying to protect you from hurting yourself. In all reality, our bodies are super resilient to challenges mentally and physically, and his whole thing is to push farther because we are capable. Now for challenge 8, he discusses a concept that he learned, that everyone is just a human being. Even Navy SEALs and celebrities, everyone is more normal than you expect them to be. And Goggins, being Goggins, he wanted to push beyond normal and accomplish amazing things. And so he talks about how that to accomplish amazing things yourself, he recommends the tool of scheduling, and how that this challenge is about taking 3 weeks, and in the first week you write down your current schedule, everything you do, extremely detailed with timestamps, and he gives you a baseline, and in 2 weeks create a new optimal schedule with everything fitting into 15 and 30 minute blocks. And it's okay if a task requires multiple time blocks, use timestamps again, and by the 3rd week you should know exactly what works best and how to optimize your time for maximum effort. So one of the things that he talks about is how there's a lot more time in your week or your life that you could spend doing other things that you basically he talks about how there's wasted time, and with that wasted time there's wasted opportunity to push and work towards whatever goals. And in that instance, he talks about how most people work a 40-hour week or 45-hour week, and I think there's 130 something hours in a week total, and that there's a lot of empty space that people don't use when they could, where there might be an empty time where you could exercise more, you could study harder, you could keep pushing yourself, and keep working, and not just use wasted space to be on your phone scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or watching YouTube, and that you can push yourself and keep going. If you use your time optimally, it can help push you through and make it to your goals that much faster. All right, so challenge 9, he talks about how he deserves to go above and beyond even after he completed his own goals, and that he urges that there's always new goals to have and achievements to be made. So he doesn't want anybody to necessarily stop. So on the 9th challenge, he talks about to stay in consistent pursuit and to put out an unending effort in order to become a true overachiever. This means that you should constantly put obstacles in front of you in order to become the best of the best of the best. And that if you don't have a goal to work towards, you're losing your full potential. And if you reach a goal, to set another one. If there's a certain weight goal and you hit it, challenge yourself in a different way. Challenge yourself mentally. Read so many books in a month or in a year, always to keep yourself progressing and pushing forward. And that could be long-term goals, that could be short-term goals, but just anything to basically keep your mind focused on progression, because that's what's important, is just to keep moving. And then as for challenge 10, last but not least, in this section of the book, Goggins admits that he failed at first when he attempted to break the Guinness World Records for the most pull-ups, which I talked about earlier. And he didn't let that stop them, and he pushed harder to try to beat the record once and for all. So in this challenge is to think about your failures, and he tells you to get your journal out again and write down the good things that came out of your failures. And he talks about how he did this in the military, and I think, I can't remember what they are. I think they're after action reports. Yes, that's the thing, AARs. And how you should take your failures, write down how you handled them, and then go through and make a list of the things that you need to fix and schedule attempts to meet these goals. Write them in Post-it notes, put them on your accountability mirror, use them to learn in your previous challenges and help to meet these goals. And then go out there and keep that mentality and just keep pushing yourself. So he talks about how don't use your failures as an excuse to quit. Keep pushing, learn from your failures, figure out what you did wrong, and figure out what you did right and what you could change to keep pushing yourself and to keep being stronger. And that's something that I feel like most people take for granted, is in general, life is not easy, life's not fair. At one point, you need to just use your past to build off of and understand that your past is your past. There's nothing you can necessarily change, and the only thing you can do is to learn from it and take the lessons you've learned and keep moving. And you don't want to get yourself caught up in the past or in the future, because if you do either, you're not going to keep moving. And you got to be present, you got to be aware, and you just got to keep going. And all these challenges are basically to keep yourself on track to do more than the average person, to work hard, to push yourself, to hit your own goals. And most of his stuff all had to deal with some mental, physical challenge between ultra races and becoming a Navy SEAL and breaking a world record for pull-ups. But he talks about how that's not what this has to be equated to. It's not only physical things. It obviously can be, but it can be anything in life, and it could be anything you put your mind to. And it's all about keeping your mindset strong, and that there's more to you than there's more to you than what you believe, and that you can always push harder, and if you push harder, you can reach your goals. It's just about how well can you keep your mind in check and push yourself farther than you ever thought possible. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things I took out of this book, is just to push yourself to hit certain goals and to work harder on things. And that's one thing I'm doing with this podcast in particular. I mean, this is something I've wanted to do for 2 years, and in general with life, I've realized that you don't know where life's going to take you, but you have to just keep moving, learn from your experiences, be present in the moment, and just keep working. And this is one of those situations for me personally, that working on this podcast, I am trying to learn something about it and something different every episode. Every time I do something, I'm trying to learn from it and better it, and I want to make it better for you guys, better for myself, learn different ways to handle things, different ways to discuss things. And I want to use this to both help better myself and use it as a method to basically challenge and educate myself, but at the same time to provide something to you listeners and to bring something to the table, and hopefully at one point inspire you, or at least pique your guys' interest into getting into other things, and to push yourself and to work on your own issues or your mental challenges or anxiety or depression or physical challenges and goals, to just keep moving and stay motivated, because it's something that everybody struggles with. And you got to understand that everyone's a human being. Everybody deals with their own shit, and everybody's very similar. You think that no one understands what you're going through, but everybody does. And it's not talked about, and everybody has to deal with stuff differently, and it's different scenarios, but everybody's going through something. And that is something that you have to realize once you get older in particular, and it's something I had to realize. I mean, I'm only 21, but it's something I've had to realize, that I'm not the only one going through stuff. And so that's why I use my own mindset, not to necessarily judge, and just keep pushing and understand that people are dealing with stuff on their own, and everybody deals with different challenges, and you just got to keep moving and get through your own. But I just want everybody to understand that and to keep pushing themselves. But as for the rest of the book, we will talk about some other challenges he sets. In the book itself, he talks about different things and mindsets that he basically said in the book. Basically, he wants you to he wants you to understand that no one's gonna help you. I will, I guess, if you do need help, hey, let me know. But at the same time, there's only so much that can be done, and you got to be your own support system. And no one can push you to your absolute full potential besides yourself. And it's all on you, that you have to master your mind. You have to be the one that you are the only one that can do that. And to accomplish things that other people think is unachievable begins with the mastery of your own mind. And without it, you wouldn't be able to survive any battle ahead. And it's something else that you got to understand is life isn't easy. That life is full of pain, sadness, humiliation, failed dreams, deaths. Every day has its up and downs, and that's part of life. And that's kind of the thing that life sets you up for, is you need to be prepared to confront what you're gonna see, because it's not all sunshine and daisies, and you're gonna have your bad days. So it's something you gotta teach yourself to deal and embrace the pain, and get comfortable with daily challenges, and motivate yourself to keep working, and don't let that necessarily become a hindrance on your own life. So right here, I was able to write down some of the main ideas and themes of the book as well, besides the challenges. But um, I'll just go through a few of them that I wrote down. Part of it is worth ethic is the single most important factor to all accomplishments, and that it's it's not up to anybody else. At one point, you gotta push yourself, and if you cannot work hard, no one else is gonna make you. And it's something you just gotta overcome and become better at. Another thing he talks about in the book is how to basically triple down on your weaknesses to make you mentally tougher. That you need to recognize what you're weak in and what is a challenge, and to take that basically by the horns and to focus on those situations and to get better at it, because most people only do what they're good at. And you got to understand where your not failures are, but your faults and your weaknesses are, to strengthen yourself mentally and physically. Then that you got to be your own hero, and you don't need to stop when you're tired. You need to stop when you're done. So you got to just keep pushing yourself to basically get through anything you're dealing with. And that's the main thing I feel like he preaches the most, is overall mindset and learning to embrace the challenges of life, and that life is challenging and you got to learn to be something more. And that's one of the main things that he taught in his book. And I do hope that you guys consider reading the book. I find it amazing. I learned quite a lot from this book, and it definitely helped with my own mindset, but I feel like it can help many others. If you don't know who David Goggins is, follow him on Instagram. You'll see this man run 20 plus miles and yelling at you to stay hard. So he's an inspiration. That's for sure. All right, everybody. Last but not least, I wanted to go over David Goggins' 10 rules for life, which are just kind of his, I guess, his 10 commandments on what he thinks is important to have a healthy mindset and to stay strong. Number 1, reprogram your mind. And that's something he talks about in his book, about basically challenging yourself and changing the way you look at things, and basically reprogramming the way you challenge yourself, and just how you have an outlook on life. And I guess another one is to turn your own darkness into power. And I know that's something that he's used as his own motivation to keep pushing, but the things that have you down, that you find as issues with yourself or insecurities, use that as fuel for the fire. Dig deep in situations, and when you need that, turn on that flame, and you use your past or things you've been through as your fuel to keep pushing. Visualize the end result. Basically, some of these are similar to some of his challenges in his book. They're just kind of worded a little differently. But visualize the end result. Visualize what you're working towards. What do you want? What is it you're trying to achieve? As a person, what's your goals? And to basically visualize and keep pushing. Build mental toughness. I'm saying a lot. I'm sorry. That's one of the things he basically talks about in the book, is how that he had to callous his mind and realize that it doesn't matter if his body's falling apart or in situations he's been through. You got to keep pushing, and if you're trying to hit certain goals, especially like something, let's say like the Navy SEALs, most people aren't going to do something as challenging as Hell Week, or most people aren't going to do an ultra marathon. but it's always great to build mental toughness so you don't get drugged down by life challenges or things that come up in your life or hardships, that you're able to deal with it and handle it, and it doesn't completely break you mentally. Take accountability. I mean, this goes along with his accountability mirror, but be accountable for what you do and understand if you hit your goals, understand the achievements you've made, and be aware of the work you've put in, but at the same time keep yourself accountable if you're not doing what you need to. If you're slacking, look at yourself and understand that the only way to make a difference is by pushing yourself through, and no one else is going to help you. Be present, and that's definitely something that a lot of people struggle with. I know I struggle with at times, but I'm definitely better than probably a lot of people my age or younger. Is just be present, be able to get away from technology. I say this as I'm creating a podcast that you listen to on Spotify or YouTube or whatever else with that. But just be present in the moment at times, especially in situations with family or friends or traveling. Like, don't live through your phone. Like, I mean, take photos, take some videos, have fun, because it's a great way to create and hold on to memories. But don't do it just to post stuff on Instagram. Don't live through your screen. When you're at a concert, don't just record the whole thing. I know I did that personally at one of my first concerts. I feel like I recorded way more than I should have for no goddamn reason. And the next concert I went to, I think I recorded 3 or 4 times for some of the main songs, and it was probably like 4 minutes of the entire concert, if that. And I was present in the moment, and I enjoyed being with friends and enjoyed the concert and the music. It's a good thing to do. If you go out to eat with your friends or go out to eat in general, don't be on your fucking phone. Don't sit there scrolling through fucking Instagram. Be present in the moment. Talk to people. Bring conversation. And I feel like that's, honestly, I feel like on his list of life rules, this is something that most people struggle with, and it's something I will probably talk about in other podcast episodes for sure. And it's something that especially teenagers and young people need to understand and reflect on. Okay, I guess the next one, which is kind of funny, it's kind of his motto, and something, if you ever do get on his Instagram and see some of his videos, is stay hard. He basically yells it at the end of any speech he gives, but it's just to stay hard in your mindset. Stay hard as a person. Don't crumble under challenge and pressure, and just be more resilient, as humans are meant to be. This is not life. Like it is now has never been this comfortable, especially in the United States. And our bodies are meant, and minds are meant to deal with struggle physically, and it's something that we have slowly lost as a civilization, I feel like. But it's something you need to do because it is good for you. It's just stay hard and challenge yourself. All right, the next one, fix yourself first. I feel like in general that one is like a focus on yourself. There's times you gotta be selfish and realize that you can't help others or do the things you need to keep moving if you don't focus on your own issues and fix yourself. And you gotta be real. You gotta understand your own insecurities and your own challenges, and you gotta work through that. And if you don't deal with the stuff on your own, then the stuff you're dealing with mentally and personally, you're not going to be able to push through other obstacles and get through the challenges later on in life. And it's something you got to understand, that there's times you got to worry about yourself more than others, and you got to understand where certain feelings are coming from, or certain mental struggles or challenges are coming up, because it's no one else knows what you're going through, and it's something you got to recognize and understand how to deal with. And everybody does it differently. Some people meditate, some people do yoga, some people run, some people weight lift, some people take cold showers, some people do all of them. And I feel like that's probably the best way, is at one point a little bit of everything, and you'll get the most out of it. And you got to understand what it is you need to try to fix the holes in your boat, and just to keep moving. The next one is to control your mind, control your emotions. You gotta know where it is you overreact, or you deal with your own issues where you have to control yourself. And it's kind of something we talked about in the last episode with XXX Tentacion, and things that he dealt with, is you got to learn to control your emotions, not to lash out, understand where these feelings are coming from, and to convert them into something else, make them into something positive, or find a way to get through those things and control what it is you need to focus on. And then his last but not least, on his rules of life, is commit fully. If there's something that you want to achieve, commit to it. And that's the only way you're ever going to get anywhere with anything, is just to go all out and try. And that's what he did when he ended up in the Navy. I'm pretty sure he quit his job at the time, and he lost his wife and ended up divorced, and he focused on himself, and he did what he had to, and he fully committed and spent his day fully focused on himself, with exercise and studying, and understanding that if he wanted to do this and get the opportunity to be in the SEALs and to hit the goals he wanted to, that he had to fully commit. And the only way to do that was to take every other obstacle out of the way and just to fully focus. But it's something you got to do at times, and you got to put some other stuff aside. If it's something you really want to achieve and hit, you got to understand your priorities. Well, everybody, I think that's probably going to do it for the end of this episode, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, it's a little different by myself. If you notice throughout this episode, there's going to be a little more editing involved, a little more transitions and background music and stuff, trying to change it up a bit. Obviously, the episode's a little shorter. So I hope this episode was good for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the topic. If you do, please comment down below. I'm going to have a poll on Spotify. Comment in the video on YouTube. Subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. DM me if you have any questions. If you have any questions about the book, or if you just have questions for me personally, I can answer them one-on-one. I can answer them on the next podcast episode. I love getting feedback. I love interacting with you guys. So if you have any questions, hit me up, and I hope you guys do enjoy, and like everything I've went through tonight, like this is my own challenge for me personally, and this is something I'm gonna keep growing and adapting to and changing. So I hope you guys enjoy, and you come along this journey with me, and hopefully enjoy this podcast, and you get into it, and you tell your friends, and you ride this train with me, and we'll go through the up and downs, and it'll get better. Trust me, it is a process of learning and figuring out what works. So hopefully, I can promise that hopefully it only gets better from here, and we'll slowly but surely make it what I want it to be, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I will talk to you guys all in the next one. I hope you do enjoy. Who knows what's going to be on the next episode. So I will see you guys all next week. Peace out, everybody. Bye.